Hi, I'm Douglas Mason, President and CEO of Rainy Mountain Royalty Corp., RMO, on the TSX Venture Exchange. Rainy Mountain Royalty Corp. is a Canadian-based mineral exploration project generator. The company currently holds multiple property interests in Ontario with joint venture partners and is seeking further joint venture partners for other drill-ready properties in our portfolio. For more information, please visit our website at rmroyalty.com or call me at 604-922-2030.
Welcome to the Goddard Report. Comments made on the Goddard Report and TalkDigitalNetwork.com are an expression of opinion only. Here is Jim Goddard.
My guest is Jordan Bateman, Communications Director for the Independent Contractors and Business Association. Welcome back to the show, Jordan.
Thanks for having me, Jim.
Are people getting scary letters in the mail about their property taxes and having to pay a speculation tax in British Columbia?
Yeah, well, they're about to. So the speculation tax is a poorly thought out taxation policy announced in the February 2018 budget by the BC NDP. It's modeled on that, bastion of good taxation policy. Just kidding. The city of Vancouver, who came up with their own crazy empty homes tax. And essentially, it's an extra, quite expensive property tax on anyone who owns more than one home in these certain vacation or in certain areas of British Columbia. So Lower Mainland, Nanaimo, Victoria, Kelowna, West Kelowna. If you own land in there, you've got to keep an eye out now for a letter coming from the government in which will trigger apparently up to 20 minutes worth of administration that you have to do in order to prove that you're not actually speculating, that you actually live there and don't need to pay this tax. Making it worse is if you're, my wife and I, we co-own our home, of course. We both have to do this paperwork, and if she does it and I don't, or if her letter gets lost and we don't fill it out, then we would still both be on the hook for this tax. So it's red tape run amok. It's typical NDP sledgehammer, trying to kill a fly with a sledgehammer policy, and I think it's going to be one of these things that probably haunts them in this Nanaimo by-election and for months to come.
Is this what they call the Cottage Owners Tax?
That's what they want to call the Cottage Owners Tax. It was a tax that when it came out in February, they swore would not apply to any British Columbians, that would only affect foreign speculators. That's not true. Even they now admit that it will affect maybe at least 1% of BC homeowners. It's just such bad policy. Look, the people who've been fighting this the hardest are the mayors in many of these communities. Doug Finlater, the former mayor of West Kelowna, fought this tax tooth and nail. Stu Young in Langford on the island's been fighting it. They know it's bad taxation policy, and it's slowed construction in their markets. You take West Kelowna, they're seeing projects move, down the road to Peachland and to Summerland that should be building in West Kelowna because people there don't have to pay the spec tax in order to do it. So it's bad policy. It's typical NDP punishing homeowners by trying to strip wealth out of people and redistribute it to their chosen few.
Is this just a pure tax grab, and will it accomplish what it's trying to do, or said it's trying to do?
Well, here's the problem. We don't know what it's trying to do. They say it's to moderate house prices and to reduce speculation. Well, first of all, we know from the Vancouver model that it doesn't reduce speculation. People, foreign buyers still come into the market in Vancouver with or without that tax. And we have no idea what they mean by moderate house prices. Like Carol James, the finance minister, has been asked many times, what do you mean by moderate? Like 10% reduction in prices, 15%, 20%, 50%, 75%? Like, what do you mean by moderating house prices? She has no idea. It has, all of these different housing issues and frankly a lack of confidence in this government have slowed the real estate market as it is. We've seen price drops of 15% in some areas of the Lower Mainland. The problem is you have people who own these homes, and all of a sudden you're slapping 15% of their retirement for 15% of their wealth. It's one of these dreaded. It's just a really unfair tax that is meant to. I think it's meant to attract, or make renters and folks like that happy. But it comes at a huge cost and a lot of bureaucracy.
Well, also, what about the so-called education tax that's hitting high-end homes? Is there going to be any end to that?
No, they're pushing ahead with that as well. And yeah, it's tone deaf. And look, real estate's a big part of Vancouver's prosperity, especially. You want to continue to build. We represent construction companies at the Independent Contractors and Businesses Association. We want to continue to have projects to build. But, new home construction is already starting to slow. You're seeing people think twice about investing money here in British Columbia in projects. And you can't blame them. This government is out to kill those projects to make them fiscally impossible to run. So, yeah, we're very concerned about these issues. I think that as these letters and this tax starts to roll out and people realize just how invasive the government is becoming, this could be a big issue splashing back on the NDP.
Well, when you say people are scared to invest, is it more than just new home construction?
Yeah, well, people are looking at all sorts of projects, right? And, new homes are built to house people who have, generally jobs. And so if you're trying to attract new people to the area, or you're trying to attract, you want to make sure millennials have a place to move into, you want to make sure that you're creating new jobs that help them. If there's no place for a workforce to live, then, you can't do, it just drives up your labor costs and makes it uncompetitive. So all of these affordability issues, all of BC's competitiveness issues, they're all tied together. And what the NDP don't realize is that it's a little bit like whack-a-mole. They pop up, they get excited and hit down using, a speculation tax hammer on one part of the board, but that pops up other problems elsewhere.
Well, the affordability problem in Vancouver is now seeing young professional couples move out of the city because they say they just can't afford to live there.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And people with really good jobs or, dual income families, struggling. But the way to solve this problem is to continue to ramp up supply and bring more into the market. Try to control the pricing by, increasing supply. Don't try to do it by robbing people of their wealth, but with punitive taxation measures that slow economic growth.
Well, they probably don't understand the real estate ladder either, where people need to have a decent price so they can move up the ladder and open up the properties underneath.
Yeah, well, exactly. So for example, we live in a non-strata row house in Langley. We're looking to purchase a larger home, so we're in the market for a larger home. Well, that means someone can buy our home who's maybe in a condo right now, but our house is great to raise 2 or 3 kids in. Like, it's a fantastic spot. So, you work your way up the ladder, but you got to make sure that you have as many entry points as possible. Taxing British Columbians because, for whatever reason they may have, a condo in Vancouver or a condo in West Kelowna and, live elsewhere, that doesn't make any sense. You should be free in this province to be able to live somewhere and own property elsewhere without having government come and try to strip you of that right, try to strip you of the money, of more money simply because of that. You're paying your property taxes, you're duly paying on both properties anyways. It's not hurting anyone. It's just government overreach.
Well, and who's going to stay in a holiday property that's ice and snow for half the year?
Well, exactly. And the other problem is, so what happens in the future? So let's say, a few thousand units come back onto the rental market. Great. The problem is if you made it, financially impossible for the private sector to build rental housing, there will be no more supply built, and you're not actually getting any further ahead. If you make it more expensive for people to buy condos and then rent them out, same thing. So you've got to be smarter about this. But the NDP are, as we've seen with a number of issues, they are ideologically driven. They only care about their very small, narrow group of people. They're out to make sure that they enrich their supporters as much as possible at the cost of everyone else. And, I'm hoping that, British Columbians wise up to this.
We'll have more with Jordan Bateman right after this.
Aven Resources Limited is a gold exploration company with significant projects in British Columbia, Saskatchewan, and the Yukon. Trading on the TSX Venture Exchange, symbol ABN, and the pink symbol ABN AF. surrounded by world-class gold deposits and mines. Aven's 23,000 hectares Forest Kerr Gold Project is located in the heart of the Golden Triangle in northwestern BC. For more information, visit us at avenresources.com.
Grand Portage Resources recently completed the 2018 drill program on its 100% controlled Herbert Gold Discovery property located in the prolific Juneau Belt in southeast Alaska. Drill results are expected through late 2018. Past drill results included numerous multi-ounce gold assays on multiple veins. Grand Portage trading symbols are GPG on the TSX Venture, GPTRF on the OTCQB, and GPB on Frankfurt. For more information, please visit our website, grandportage.com.
Welcome back. We're speaking with Jordan Bateman. Jordan, studies now are finding that there was massive money laundering going on in BC casinos, hundreds of millions of dollars that the provincial government under the Liberals ignored. Did the same thing happen in the real estate industry, where cash was just thrown on a table somewhere and used without going through proper channels?
Maybe. I mean, I'm not a investigator on these kind of issues, and here's the one thing I would say about all of these, the dirty money media stories that are going on, and kind of what's feeding them, and whether there should be a public inquiry into corruption across British Columbia and things. I would say this. I think people need to realize and remember that David Eby and the NDP care mainly about one thing, and that's staying in power. And they they do that by, knocking down their opponent, the BC Liberals. So you'll notice that every single one of these stories, they always, come back to David Eby blaming the BC Liberals. Doesn't blame the regulators, doesn't blame the feds, doesn't blame the lawyers, doesn't blame the cops, doesn't blame the crooks. God forbid we blame the crooks in our society. Always comes back to blaming, a handful of cabinet ministers or the BC Liberals. That's why I think there'll never be a public inquiry into this, because David Eby and John Horgan want to use it as a hammer on the BC Liberals. And one thing about public inquiries is they'll go down every rabbit hole, and it may turn out, God forbid for the NDP, that it wasn't actually because of, Premier Christy Clark or Gordon Campbell that this happened, that it may have been a failure, a systemic failure of regulators and federal lawyers and all of those folks. They want to make sure that they keep their message intact. So, I read the media accounts. There's some really good journalism going on. I just wish that I just suspect that they get a lot of this information from the NDP government, who may not be the most pure examples of a unbiased source.
Well, they did have their own bingo scandal, didn't they?
Well, exactly, and again,
where they took the money personally.
Yeah, precisely. And funnily enough, I think that happened in Nanaimo, where the by-election is going on right now. So, look, I just find it incredibly difficult to believe that you have, cabinet ministers sitting there and somehow, what are you saying? Are they benefiting from corruption? I don't get it. Any money that BCLC made off of, money laundering didn't go into BC Liberal politicians' pockets. It didn't go into, it went into general revenues. It went into, funding roads and hospitals and, all the wonderful things that we, take for granted in our society. So, I just don't get the NDP's, angle on this. I feel a lot more confident in David Eby as the so-called crusading attorney general if he actually, could point to some, cases that, he and his crack team have investigated and put actual criminals in jail. Right now, it's just more political hot air and a good way to try to kick the BC Liberals around and distract from other issues. No doubt that as the spec tax scandal kind of unfolds, or the spec tax problems unfold, no doubt David Eby will pull out another dirty money story and try to divert the media's attention away from what's going on by going back to that. So watch for that in the coming days, I'm sure.
We'll have more with Jordan Bateman right after this.
Hi, I'm Douglas Mason, President and CEO of Magnum Gold Corp, MGI and the TSX Venture Exchange. A 2015 drill program on the LH property intersected several high-grade gold intersections, including 11 meters of 20.66 grams per ton gold. Additional drill targets on the LH property have been identified by a 2018 drone airborne magnetic survey to further evaluate a pyrrhotite-enriched gold-bearing system. Please visit our website at magnumgoldcorp.com.
Don't miss out. Stay informed. Receive the HowStreet.com weekly recap with thought-provoking podcasts, radio, and articles delivered to your inbox. Sign up for the HowStreet.com weekly recap on our homepage at HowStreet.com.
Welcome back. We're speaking with Jordan Bateman. Jordan, a survey of Canadians found 58% feel that the lack of pipeline capacity is a crisis for Canada. In Alberta, it was over 80%. Is it a crisis, and is there any quick solution?
Yeah, 58% of Canadians are correct. It is a crisis. I've been reading some interesting pieces out of Kamloops, and from people who I wouldn't have expected to be supportive of pipelines and certainly of Trans Mountain. And they are very much in support of the Trans Mountain pipeline. The crisis as they see it is these rail lines running along the Thompson and then eventually the Fraser Rivers, chock full of oil, and simply because we don't have capacity in the current Trans Mountain pipeline to send this stuff to the coast. So we send it by train, and trains have a high, trains are safe, but they're not as safe as pipelines. And it's just going to take one of these trains derailing into one of these rivers, and boom, think how fast the Fraser runs, and just how quickly that oil could spread. So, yeah, it is a crisis. It's a crisis. I think it's an environmental crisis. Flying in the face of what the professional activists funded by American NGOs say. I think the bigger crisis is that you've got all this oil running by rail line, not by safe pipeline. That's one piece, and it is a crisis economically. The difference in price for what we can get for our oil, is $20 to $30 less per barrel sometimes than what you could get in other markets. And the fact we can't get it out, is actually harming our economy. So it's bad news. If people who are listening to this have friends and family in Alberta, especially in Calgary or around Fort Mac, talk to them. Ask them what life is like there right now, because it isn't good. The economy's slowed down, business is fleeing, investment is fleeing, and it's all because the BC Greens and the NDP and those types of people are pushing back against a pipeline that was properly approved by the important agencies.
How much of the pipeline protest is funded by foreign sources who have an interest to keep Canadian energy supplies suppressed?
Well, that's a good question for Vivian Krause. But millions of dollars have flowed from these U.S. NGOs into these, special tailor-made little protest groups. So that's not great. It's very bad news. It's head-scratching. And now, inexplicably, they're protesting LNG, like natural gas pipelines, which have none of the spill problems of other pipelines. This isn't like oil. There's no real need to protest these, but they're jumping on board with this very small group of renegade hereditary chiefs with the Unistoten and trying to pretend that they speak for an entire First Nation. So yeah, it's frustrating. I feel frustrated for the First Nations peoples who've endorsed these projects, who want to get economic development going, who want to reap the rewards for their communities, who want to do better by their kids. It must just be absolutely heartbreaking for them to see all this going on.
Well, wasn't all the territory that the natural gas pipeline is to run on agreed to by the elected Aboriginal leaders? Yeah,
they were, exactly. So now you have, these so-called, some of these groups also fight for democratic reform. So you have these groups who profess to want democratic reform and self-government for First Nations, actually siding with hereditary chiefs over elected councils. It makes no sense. And siding with a handful of hereditary chiefs over other hereditary chiefs who actually want this project. So the whole thing is crazy, and it just goes to show you, like, even even John Horgan, who, has done some really boneheaded economic things around resource development since he took over, even he was pointing out like the flaws in the way that this has gone on, in the flaws in these protesters' complaints. They're protesting oil pipelines by somehow protesting a natural gas pipeline. The whole thing is wild. I actually sometimes wonder if we built a pipeline, a water pipeline, a clean water pipeline across those lands, if they protest that too, simply because it has the word pipeline in it.
Jordan, thank you so much for chatting with us.
Thanks for having me.
My guest has been Jordan Bateman, Communications Director for the Independent Contractors and Business Association, their website, icba.ca. If you have any questions for Jordan or any of our other guests, you can send them to info@housestreet.com. I'm Jim Goddard. Thanks for listening.
Comments made on the Goddard Report and TalkDigitalNetwork.com are an expression of opinion only. The Goddard Report is available online and mobile at TalkDigitalNetwork.com. The Goddard Report is a production of House Street Media Incorporated.